Drafting in the middle rounds of your fantasy football draft can be an absolute crap show sometimes, but we go back to one thing consistently, and it's really served us well after many years of playing fantasy football. Draft players on good offenses. It makes the most sense. Good offenses score the most points. They have the most touchdown opportunities. They have the most red zone trips, right? And so simply drafting players in good offenses, sometimes keeping fantasy football simple, really does pay dividends. And so today we're going to look at the top projected offenses based on implied team totals in Vegas lines. So who are the projected top offenses for this year, players on those offenses that are going in these ranges that might just be underdrafted. When you get on the clock, you should consider these guys because of the situation they're going to be in, because they are going to be in an offense that is going to be conducive for fantasy production. So I'll start with the two guys here at the top. I just want to talk about both of them together, and we'll get in kind of the meat and potatoes here. Christian McCaffrey, obviously the 49ers projected, I think, at 8th in terms of 24.9 implied points per game in 2025. And really, when you're thinking about it, in the past, we've had a lot of mouths to feed in San Francisco. Deebo Samuel is a mouth to feed. Brandon Ayuk was a mouth to feed. George Kittle's still a mouth to feed. But really, you take away two of those guys. Juwan Jennings necessarily isn't a mouth to feed. He's a mouth that's going to benefit, right? He's not somebody that, as an individual talent, is going to demand a ton of targets. And so Christian McCaffrey actually has more room to perform from a fantasy football perspective as ever. The problem with Chris McCaffrey, of course, is the risk, right? Of course, is the injury risk and the fact that he could lose your season. But the thing is, he's going now at like the 1-2 turn. Sometimes he's going in the second round. If you're getting Chris McCaffrey in the second round, look, he's going to be on one of the top offenses, and he really is like a big reason that they're going to be a top offense. You take Christian McCaffrey out of the equation, the 49ers actually aren't on this list probably. They would still be up there because of the Shanahan offense, but I will still say, with Christian McCaffrey, you do reach a point where you just have to take him. And I think that point is probably like at the 1-2 turn. Kyren Williams is also on here as well. I've already talked about Kyren. He's like a super my guy this year. I really like Kyren Williams, and he's playing again on the Los Angeles Rams, projected as the 10th highest offense in 2025. Obviously, with Matt Stafford playing or not playing, that's going to make a big difference in that offense. But Kyren Williams is going to get a ton. We talk about good offenses and the rate at which they are in the red zone or scoring touchdowns. Kyren Williams led the NFL in red zone carries last year. I think he had like legitimately 70, if I'm not mistaken. So he is somebody that, again, when it gets to in the second round, even though he doesn't have a ton of like receiving upside propping up his floor, we like him because, again, the offense is going to be good. And when you're looking at red zone touches for Kyren Williams among running backs last year, 77, 12 goal line carries. That's first in the league. He's getting more goal line carries in red zone touches than any other back in the league. Why is that? Because he's on an offense that gets there. It's just that simple. And so that's why he's kind of a no-brainer pick in the second round. So those guys are going up top. These guys are all kind of going in the middle of your drafts. And these are guys, if you get a chance to draft them, or if you're between two guys, this might be the tiebreaker here, is just drafting the better offense. I will say this, right now we have literally the best deal in fantasy football going on over on the site. We decided to offer a season pass. Basically, you get everything on the site for $30, but you get access to the algorithm. You get access to all of our rankings, every tool on the site, and you can get in a league with us if you use code DOMAIN when you sign up. So I've got the link in the comments. Again, if you use code DOMAIN, sign up for the season pass, you can get in a live league with Nathan and I, draft live on the channel, be in a great fantasy football league this year, and also access everything that we have on the site. And so go check it out while we have this deal. Again, the season pass is going to cover you from now until December, so it's a great deal. But let's get back to it here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a secret to anyone that once you get into the later rounds, like after the early round 7 range at wide receiver, it gets really, really ugly. You have a couple of interesting picks like Stephon Diggs. It's like in a questionable offense. Is he going to be the number one option? You have a couple of other like upside shots like Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall with the Ayuk injury. And then like once you get to the 10th round, again, it's just kind of disgusting. But Keon Coleman is just sitting there, and admittedly, like there is an avenue for him to be successful, and I don't think anyone is really going to deny that given the situation that he's in. I mean, Khalil Shakir, I think is a little bit banged up right now.
Yes.
And Dalton Kincaid, who we expected to break out last season and be like that quote-unquote wide receiver one, it never actually happened, and he's kind of just trash. It's going to come back and bite us, and that's okay. But with Dalton Kincaid, like again, we're not really expecting anything from him this season, or not as much as we did previously with the amount of upside that we thought he could have. James Cook signs the nice extension with the Buffalo Bills. He's the number one running back option there. But again, it's still Josh Allen, and he's still going to provide a good amount of passing volume. And it's either going to be super evenly spread out across the board like we saw last year, where you're not really going to have any hyper-productive guys, or someone is just kind of going to take over. And Keon Coleman does have the traits to do that. He really does. I mean, they drafted him in the early second round last season because they saw those traits, and we knew that he was going to be raw and take a little bit of time to come on. And last season, I mean, it just wasn't pretty. When you're looking even like with the efficiency metrics, even as a raw prospect, you would want to see him be better as efficiency wise. He did have some double-digit games. He had like an 11-point game against Houston with 5 targets, but that was like a big, literally 1 catch for 49 yards and a touchdown. That's volatile. You can't depend on that. The rest was interesting. He had like four receptions for 125 yards against Tennessee in Week 7, good for 16 points. 18 points against Seattle. He actually had a touchdown with more receptions that game. He had another 11-point game the following year. He's gotten multiple like high target volume games, but he hasn't actually hauled in a lot of those opportunities because a lot of his shots have been downfield shots from Josh Allen, inefficient shots taken down the field. So if he can kind of get some more usage and work like in the short to intermediate game and maybe start to get some of those opportunities that like Khalil Shakir has been getting as the exclusive slot wide receiver, if Keon Coleman can be a little more versatile, then I think we actually have a bit of a conversation to have with him because again, in the 10th round, I think he honestly is going to be one of the higher upside shots that you can take at the wide receiver position where it's just ugly across the board. And then you do have another guy here in David Montgomery who's kind of the complete opposite, right? Where he's more of your high floor guy who you're pretty much going to be relying on as long as he's on the field to be a more than viable flex option. I mean, a guy that can drop 20 points any given week, depending on the amount of touches he gets in the red zone and if he can get those into the end zone. David Montgomery, honestly, in our opinion, is one of the safest picks that you can take at the running back position at his current price because after him, it gets really ugly and it gets really, really risky. I mean, talk about risk in the 7th round with running backs. I mean, you're looking at Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Isaiah Pacheco generally going right around David Montgomery. All of those guys, I think, individually do admittedly have higher upside than David Montgomery because they could be the number 1 running back options in their respective offenses. But with the Lions, like why would you want to bet against the Detroit Lions and what they've consistently been able to do year in and year out, dating back to the Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift days with multiple running backs being consistently productive in that offense? I think you got to expect the same thing to happen this year for Montgomery. And it's, again, a reason why we've been talking about him so much over the last few weeks is just because we've come to the realization that when you look at the algorithm and you look at the running backs in that range, his upside's a 7, his floor score is a 9. There's no one else in that range that's even sniffing a floor score of 9. Then the next time you're going to get even close to that floor score is when you literally get into the top 12 running back conversation. With the algorithm. Joe Mixon, when he's on the field, has a very high floor score as well because of his volume, but he's quite a bit more risky this season because of the injury that he already is dealing with at the moment. He may not even start the year. So we're a big fan of Montgomery this season.
Yeah, with Keon, I mean, this is a situation where the Bills are projected the top offense in the NFL, and they don't have a pass catcher going before the 9th round. It's just absolutely absurd. But also, one thing to keep in mind is a hallmark of good offenses is that these good offenses typically have quarterbacks who don't hone in on 1 or 2 receivers. They typically are so good that they can spread the ball to literally anybody on their team, and they're in situations where everybody is set up to thrive there. And so that is kind of, what you risk with taking a Keon Coleman. But like another similar situation is Isaiah Pacheco in the Kansas City Chiefs backfield. Isaiah Pacheco in a vacuum would be a no-brainer to pick because 25.4 implied points per game for the Chiefs this year would be 3rd. Obviously, they're going to have one of the best offenses in the league. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The problem is the Chiefs are so effective at using multiple running backs and have been for so long now that there's no guarantee that he is going to be an absolute bell cow workhorse back. Because even in his good season, he only had 205 carries that year. He had 7 touchdowns as well. But what if they use Pacheco on 1st and 2nd downs? And what if they use any of their other 3 or 4 backs they could possibly use on other downs? It's going to significantly cut into Isaiah Pacheco's upside. And so that is part of the downside to taking somebody like Isaiah Pacheco. Running back by committee is prevalent in every backfield in the NFL now. But in this particular backfield, they run like a 3 or 4 running back committee every single year. However, with Isaiah Pacheco, you do have to acknowledge that the touchdown upside is going to be very high. If Isaiah Pacheco does end up being the red zone guy for the Kansas City Chiefs, he is probably going to score 1 million touchdowns and have like a James Cook type year. That is very possible. So you have to keep in mind that he could be a running back 1, a low-end running back 1, just on touchdowns alone. Obviously, we haven't seen the receiving usage from Isaiah Pacheco yet. I have no reason to believe they're going to give him receiving usage this year. You can project it out all you want, but they have other guys that are better with that skill set that they plan on using. And so I think they're going to use all those guys. But again, like that's a running back in a situation where if you're getting him in the 6th, 7th round, you might just go for the best offense there. Another guy in that offense, Travis Kelce. I mean, we've shorted Travis Kelce pretty significantly compared to where he was going last year. I think Corey took him in the third round of the Flock League, right? And so, Travis Kelce's big fall off looks like this. He was a top 2 tight end for like 8 straight years. He then went to 3 in 2023. And then last year he fell off. He way fell off. And he actually had more targets, more receptions than he did the year before. He just had less touchdowns and slightly less yards. And he was the tight end 5. That was his big fall off. He was the tight end 5 last year. So the thing with Kelce is, even if you're considering Kelce, I mean, Kelce's going behind Hawkinson in a lot of these drafts, but even comparing him to like Sam Laporta and what he did last year, and Laporta is also a great pick. He's just pricier, and we think he's being drafted where he should. Laporta last year had 174 points. Travis Kelce outscored him. And so Kelce's in an offense where you may not have Rashee Rice there at first also, and that could be conducive to him being extremely productive at the beginning of the year. But it's Travis Kelce. He's probably going to be productive the whole time. And so both of those guys in the Chiefs offense, I mean, you got Isaiah Pacheco going in the 6th round. Sometimes if it's in the 5th, maybe, not as great a value. But the 6th round, 7th round is going to be a good value for Isaiah Pacheco. And then Travis Kelce in the 8th and 9th round, I think if you get him there, he's a great tight end. You just wait on tight end and grab Kelce. You're grabbing a tight end in one of the top 3 projected offenses in the NFL. That seems like a no-brainer to me as well. And so another offense that I want to touch on here real quick, the Washington Commanders offense. This is kind of the same thing. Commanders 5th here, 25.2 points per game, okay? And last year with Brian Robinson, the thing about Brian Robinson is when you're looking at his floor score in the algorithm, it is extremely low. And the reason for that is because Brian Robinson literally has 0 receiving upside. When you're looking at he had 25 targets all of last year in 14 games. 25 targets. Where Brian Robinson ended up actually excelling the last couple of years is really touchdowns. And, in 2023, he was the running back 21, scored 198 PPR points, and he did have 43 receptions, but he had 4 receiving touchdowns in that offense. Last year in a brand new offense, he had almost half the targets he had the year before and had 0 receiving touchdowns, but he had 8 rushing touchdowns. And really what you're drafting Brian Robinson to be for you is a rushing upside guy, a touchdown upside guy, right? And so, you're looking at his price, and he's going a lot of times like 7th, 8th round. You're looking at some of the other running backs there, Tony Pollard, Quinshon Judkins, Tyrone Tracy, and Travis Etienne. Brian Robinson is objectively in the best offense out of that group. And so if you're looking at these running backs and saying, okay, I don't know which one to take, but I need my running back 3, Brian Robinson probably is going to be the guy because, he is playing in the best offense, and he's probably going to have the most opportunities at the goal line more than Tracy, Pollard, Judkins, Etienne, guys like that. And so that could end up being a deal breaker. We also should talk about Deebo Samuel real quick, but honestly, I don't have a ton to say here about Deebo because, with Deebo, I think this could be the vacated volume fallacy. We expect Terry to play. If Terry doesn't play, that's different. But just because there is volume doesn't mean that this offense is going to feed Deebo Samuel, because Deebo Samuel is not a high target guy anymore. He's not. You saw that last year. He's not going to be a high target guy. He's not going to be a heavy workload guy. He's going to be more of a make your offense a little bit more creative guy, which still can lead to fantasy points. But at least this year, I think they do have enough guys catching passes. And you saw this last year. You saw this, and Zach Ertz ended up being productive last year. And why was Zach Ertz productive? It's because you're talking about a top 5 offense, and outside of Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz was the other guy there. And so Zach Ertz actually had 177 PPR points last year. He was the tight end 7 in PPR leagues. He had 7 touchdowns last year. Somebody's got to score in these high octane offenses. But you also saw it, kind of present itself in guys like Noah Brown, and that's where some of this can be a little bit tricky. But Noah Brown in 2024 had 56 targets, 35 receptions, and had 450 yards. So he's taking away some of that. There were some other guys there. Who was another guy in that offense? Random guy that was producing. I can't remember. It wasn't Zacchaeus, was it? He wasn't on the no. Yeah, it was Zacchaeus. Yes. Okay. 64 targets, 45 receptions, 500 yards. And so those two guys combined to somebody who would finish as a wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. And so again, that's one of the hallmarks of these offenses, that sometimes they just have enough guys, random guys, just the guys that all get about 500 yards, and they end up taking up some of the production that the high-end guy would take. But I do think if you're looking there, the red zone opportunities are something that a running back's going to get, and Brian Robinson right now has the lead role in Washington. So there are a couple more offenses that we're going to talk about here that, again, could have guys that are underdrafted just because they're good offenses.
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore, the biggest focus with Baltimore is that, they are, even as explosive of an offense as they are in terms of production across the board, They are very run heavy, right? Which is why Derrick Henry was so perfect. He was a great match in Baltimore to pair with the rushing upside of Lamar. And I will say last year in an MVP season for Lamar Jackson, where he should have won MVP, he had 41 passing touchdowns. That was the best he's ever done in his entire career. That was the best passing clinic that we've seen from Lamar ever. As well, again, his rushing was elite level. Again, almost 1,000 rushing yards, like 915 rushing yards. So all that to say, like even in the best passing year for Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers was a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2. He finishes a wide receiver 25 in total points last season. But you did have a good productive year for Rashad Bateman as well, which was really nice to see. So I do want to touch on these guys specifically because, again, it's just assumed Derrick Henry's going to produce. He's going to be hyper-productive as long as he stays healthy. Zay Flowers is a very interesting pick this season because he is going at a much cheaper price than he was last year when everybody was expecting a second-year breakout, including ourselves. And while he did have some really good games, the consistency just wasn't there. If you're getting mid-6th round Zay Flowers, I'm okay with that. I really, really am at that price because, I mean, at that point, you're looking, if you're going all skill position guys, if you're going all wide receiver and running back in the first 6 rounds, you're really looking at Zay Flowers being your last flex option. And at that price, instead of him being your wide receiver 2, which was like what his prices were last year if you were going a couple running backs in the first 4 rounds and then what Zay Flowers was your second wide receiver in the 4th or maybe the beginning of the 5th, that's a little bit more of a risky selection there. So with Zay, I do think that like any given week he can have a ridiculous amount of target volume. He does have a floor of like 5, 6, 7 targets. Which is really good to see. I think he's going to continue that this year. And I do have to like give Rashad Bateman his flowers as well. Pun intended. So Rashad Bateman did have 8 games last year where he had double-digit production. So if you're talking like a sleeper pick, last pick in your fantasy draft, if you want to go ahead and take a flyer on Rashad Bateman, he really is like he's a better version of Rashid Shaheed in a better offense. And he's more consistent, like in terms of like what he's going to do on a weekly basis. Again, it's still inconsistent. It's still boom bust. But if you're desperate, if you've got bye weeks, if you're really, really struggling with injuries, if you're going through like a injury run for a few weeks, and you got to put Rashad Bateman in there, any given week, man, he can put up 15, 20 points. I mean, you want to start Rashad Bateman when they're playing Cincinnati. 15 points against Cincinnati week 5, and then they played him again in week 10, 17 points. He'll have some good games of some nice production there. So I also will say DeAndre Hopkins might be a guy that I don't even know. DeAndre Hopkins is not really even draftable right now, but he's a guy you'll want to keep an eye on in waivers early in the season as well. If he really finds a nice connection with Lamar Jackson sooner than expected. He's, again, old and washed up, kind of Keenan Allen level, but that is something that you want to keep an eye on. He could get his own there.
And then 2 more guys here, a little bit more high-profile guys, the guys we talked about. But Devonta Smith, I think he's a great pick this year wherever you're getting him in your drafts, just because, again, I've already made this case on other videos, but Devonta Smith did average 15 points per game last year, and he was in an offense that threw the ball literally 0. And so if they throw the ball even a little bit more, Devonta Smith's set up to be productive, but he has a super high floor. He has a high floor because of what he's proven he can do every time he's on the field. Every year he's been in the NFL, he's been consistent, right? He's been a flexible guy every year. And so he will be flexible. He's a guy you can draft and know you're going to be able to start him. And that's nice. There's an advantage in having security in guys like that. And so Devonta Smith, I think he's obviously on the Eagles offense projected 6th here. And then Emeka Egbuka on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers projected 7th. And look, with the Bucs are going to have a good offense regardless of if Mike Evans or Chris Godwin's on the field. They just will, because there were times last year where they didn't have those guys. And what did they do? What did Baker do last year when he didn't have those guys? He performed, man. He was good. He was fantasy productive. And who was he throwing to? Jalen McMillan. Who the frick else? There's somebody else there. Who even was it, though? Was
it Gage?
I mean, Kate Otten, Russell Gage. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was one of them. And again, like good offenses don't need these superstar wide receivers. A lot of times they just have them, and it works out because
Trey Palmer.
Do what? Oh no, Gage. No,
Trey Palmer.
Gage was out. Out. Yeah. Who was it?
Was it Trey Palmer?
Palmer's one of them. Yeah. We can't even think of it, right? I know there's another guy there. So, let's see. Sterling Shepard, I think, was there last year.
It was Shepard.
Right. Yeah. So that was probably who I'm thinking of.
Yep. That was
you don't know. And so Egbuka, again, if Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, or just Chris Godwin starts the season out, Egbuka's going to get a chance to get his foot in the door there offensively, and he could end up being productive. And so again, if you follow this rule, and if you just draft players in good offenses, it almost always works out for you. And we talk about this when we're drafting all the time. You've heard us say this now for 3 years. Like, well, I tend to just like players in good offenses. You wonder why we're fading JT, even though we're huge Colts fans. One, we're not going to make homer picks. But number two, it's not projected to be a good offense this year. And the guys around him, Kyron Williams is in a good offense. Josh Jacobs is in a good offense. Bucky Irving is in a good offense. Chase Brown is in a good offense. Why wouldn't I take one of those guys over JT? And obviously JT's the best player there, but he's in the worst offense. And so you have to kind of balance those things out. And so if you enjoyed the video, do us a huge favor, drop a like and make sure you subscribe. And also you can check out the link in the pinned comment if you'd like to get the algorithm with all of this in it. And you can also get access to everything on the site from now until December. It's the best deal in fantasy football with our season pass, $30 literally for everything. So go check it out. Use code DOMAIN. You can get in a league with us. We appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching, and we will see you later.